My brother-in-law drained $47,000 from my horse rescue ranch after our family reunion. When I confronted him, he laughed. "We needed it more than you." I said, "Then you won't mind what's coming." The money was gone before the barbecue smell left my clothes. 3 transfers, 17 minutes, $47,000. I run a horse rescue ranch. That was 8 months of feed. I had been at the family reunion until 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Potato salad, lawn chairs, my niece Lily asking if she could come back and see Biscuit again. Biscuit being a 31-year-old Appaloosa who had arrived at Acton Ridge Rescue with a broken spirit and had spent 3 years becoming the gentlest animal I had ever known. I had driven home with my windows down because the June evening was perfect, and I had fed the horses and checked the water troughs and gone to bed feeling the particular satisfaction of a good day. Saturday night, 11:47 p.m. I opened my banking app the way I open it every night because I am a former accountant, and reconciling numbers before sleep is not a habit I ever broke. Friday balance, $50,847. Saturday balance, $3,147. I looked at it for a long time. 3 Zelle transfers, 2:14 p.m., 2:22 p.m., 2:31 p.m. Recipient initials, GH. I knew one GH in my contacts. I did not sleep that night. My name is Chelsea Acton. I am 38 years old, and I have run Acton Ridge Rescue in rural Virginia for 7 years. Before the ranch, I spent 11 years as a staff accountant and then a controller at a mid-sized logistics firm in Richmond. I left because the work was correct, but not right. It paid well and used my skills and produced nothing I could point to at the end of a day and say, that matters. The ranch matters. 22 horses at current count. All of them pulled from neglect cases, auctions, kill pens. Some come broken in the body, some come broken in the spirit, some come broken in both. We rehabilitate them, medically, behaviorally, sometimes just temporarily, which means giving a traumatized animal enough quiet and enough consistency that it remembers how to trust. We rehome what we can. We keep what we can't rehome. We operate on donations, a small farm store, and the particular stubbornness of a woman who was not willing to let animals suffer because the margins were difficult. $47,000 was not a rounding error. It was the difference between making it to February or not. Garrett Hollis is my brother-in-law. He married my sister Paige 9 years ago. He is 41 years old and has the specific quality of a man who has never been held accountable for anything in a way that registered, which produces a particular kind of confidence that is indistinguishable from charm until the moment it isn't. He works in residential real estate, intermittently. He has a company, Hollis Property Group LLC, that I had heard mentioned at family dinners without ever seeing produce a clear result. He has opinions about investments, specifically about sports betting, which he discusses with the enthusiasm of someone who has not yet connected the losing streaks to the pattern they form. He and Paige have 2 daughters, Lily, 7, who loves horses, Emma, 4, who is afraid of them and prefers the barn cats. I love both of my nieces without qualification or condition, which I want to say clearly because the accounting of what their parents did does not extend to them. I called Garrett on Sunday morning at 8:15. He picked up cheerful. That is the specific detail I keep returning to. Not guarded, not careful, not the voice of a man who had done something the previous afternoon and was monitoring for fallout. Cheerful. The voice of someone who had made a decision, executed it, and filed it underhandled. Great party yesterday. Lily hasn't stopped talking about Biscuit. She keeps asking when she can come back. I need to talk about 3 Zelle transfers totaling $47,000 from my business account. Yesterday, between 2 and 2:31 p.m. 4 seconds. Then a snort. Not of surprise. Of mild annoyance like a man who has been interrupted during something more interesting. Oh, that. Yeah, we needed it. Paige didn't want to ask because she knew you'd make it a whole thing. Garrett, that's theft. His voice changed. The cheerful drained out of it the way water drains through gravel. Fast. Complete. Leaving something harder underneath. Theft. He said it flat, like a word he found imprecise. Come on. We needed it more than you. You've got your ranch, your horses, your little store. We've got 2 kids and a mortgage. We're family, Chelsea. A pause. And frankly, you owe your sister. She's had to deal with you looking down on her whole life. The accountant, the big career, the ranch that everyone thinks is so noble. We needed the money. We took it. Family takes care of family. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From a very specific kind of understanding. I have reconciled numbers for 22 years. I understand the difference between an error and a decision, between a miscalculation and a pattern. What I had just heard was not confusion or guilt or a man who had done something impulsive and was struggling to explain it. This was a man who felt entitled. I drove to my CPA's office on Monday morning. Ruth Alcott had been my accountant since I opened the ranch. 17 years in practice, the last 6 with a specialty in small business forensic accounting that she had developed after a client embezzlement case that had required her to build skills she had not previously needed. She was 52 and had the quality of someone who had seen enough financial fraud to be neither surprised nor comfortable with it. I put the bank statements on her desk. She traced every dollar by Tuesday afternoon. The first transfer, $18,000 to Hollis Property Group LLC. Ruth looked it up in the Virginia State Corporation Commission database. The LLC had been administratively dissolved 6 months earlier. It had failed to file its annual report and had been automatically terminated. The money went to a dead company. The second transfer, $14,000 to a digital sports betting platform registered in Malta. The third transfer, transfer $15,000 to a joint account held by Garrett and Paige Hollis. Ruth pulled the transaction records through the bank's fraud investigation process. The $15,000 had been withdrawn in cash within 48 hours. 4 ATM transactions, each one slightly under the daily withdrawal limit. This isn't borrowing, Ruth said. She said it without editorializing, the way accountants state findings. The structuring of the cash withdrawals, keeping each one under the daily limit, demonstrates awareness of reporting thresholds. The transfer to a dissolved LLC suggests an attempt to obscure the destination of funds. A prosecutor would call this larceny. What do I need to file a report? What you have is already substantial, she said. Bank records, transaction logs. You'll want a device log from your bank showing where the transfers originated. I called the bank that afternoon. Fraud department. I explained what had happened. The associate flagged the account and initiated a device origin trace on the 3 transactions. The transfers had originated from the IP address registered to my farm store's point-of-sale tablet, which had been at the reunion, which Garrett had been standing next to at 2:08 p.m. Saturday, when I had been in the barn with my stable hand Miguel, who had been working with me from 1 o'clock until 5. I called Miguel that evening. Miguel Reyes had worked at Acton Ridge for 4 years. He was 27, meticulous with the horses, and had the specific quality of a reliable person who understood the difference between his job and the situations that sometimes surrounded it. I told him what had happened and asked if he would be willing to sign an affidavit placing me in the barn during the transfer window. Of course, he said. That's true. You were there the whole afternoon. He came to the farm the next morning and signed in front of Ruth, who had a notary license. She stamped it. I had the bank statements. I had the device logs. I had Miguel's signed and notarized affidavit. I had Ruth's forensic summary. I built the folder over 3 days. Tab 1, bank statements before and after. Tab 2, transaction records with timestamps. Tab 3, device origin report from the bank's fraud division. Tab 4, Ruth's forensic summary. 6 pages. Every dollar accounted for. Tab 5, I left empty. I didn't know yet what Tab 5 would be. I filed the police report on a Friday morning at the county sheriff's office. Deputy Earl Beckett had been with the department for 14 years. He was the kind of law enforcement officer who reminded me of the accountants I had respected most in my career. Methodical, unhurried, interested in what the documentation actually said, rather than what people told him it said. He went through every page of the folder. He went through it twice. He looked up. You've done half my job for me. My brother-in-law emptied the account that feeds 22 rescue horses and used it to gamble, I said. Yes, deputy, I'm sure. He noted the dissolved LLC, the sports betting platform, the structured cash withdrawals. The device log is significant, he said. It places the transfers at a specific device at a specific location. Combined with the affidavit placing you elsewhere, you've established he had access and you didn't initiate it. Is it enough for a warrant? It's enough to open a case, he said. Whether it gets to a warrant depends on what the prosecutor's office decides, but this is a strong file. He looked at the folder. Do you have any additional evidence you haven't included? Not yet, I said. I drove home. I went back to work. I fed the horses. I thought about the fact that Garrett had called it borrowing and that somewhere between Beckett's desk and my kitchen there was a gap between what Garrett believed he had done and what the Commonwealth of Virginia was going to call it, and I was content to let that gap do its work. Then I found the jacket. I was clearing my storage shed in late July, the one near the parking area where guests left things at events. My sister's denim jacket had been there since the reunion. Light wash, brass buttons, the kind of jacket Paige had always had 3 of at any given time. I picked it up to set it aside, checked the pockets out of habit. Left pocket, a hair tie, 2 receipts, a lip balm. Right pocket, a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was a screenshot. Printed on regular paper, slightly grainy the way screenshots print when they've been taken on a phone and sent to a home printer. My banking app, my account balance, $50,147.23, timestamp, 2:08 p.m. Saturday, June 15th, 6 minutes before the first transfer. I stood in my storage shed and I looked at that paper. In the bottom margin, in my sister's handwriting, I had known her handwriting since we were children. I knew it as well as I knew my own. Enough. G says yes. 4 words. Written in the margin of a printed screenshot of my bank balance. She had checked my balance during the reunion, photographed it on her phone, printed it, confirmed the amount was worth taking, carried it in her jacket pocket to show Garrett. Written his confirmation in the margin. She hadn't just known. She had scouted it. My sister had stood at my family reunion, eaten my food, watched her daughter ask about my horse, and spent part of that afternoon verifying that I had enough money to make it worth stealing. I sat down on a feed bag. I sat there for a while. Then I put the jacket, with the paper still in the pocket, into a Ziploc bag from my kitchen. I labeled it with the date and time in permanent marker. I drove to Ruth's office. She read it once. This changes the picture, she said. She was very still in the way she went still when something was significant. This isn't just unauthorized access. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. This establishes premeditation. It establishes that your sister knew the amount, confirmed the amount, and communicated the green light to Garrett. She looked at me over her glasses. This is conspiracy. I added tab 5 to the folder. Evidence sleeve, plastic, labeled with the date found, the location found, the chain of custody from shed to office. I called Deputy Beckett. He drove out to Ruth's office the following morning and photographed the document in the sleeve without removing it. I'm going to need to submit this to the prosecutor, he said, along with the rest of your file. I know, I said. Chelsea. He looked at me. This is a significant piece of evidence. You understand what it means for your sister. I understand what it means, I said. I also understand what it would have meant for 22 horses if I hadn't caught this. He nodded. He left. My mother's birthday is August 23rd. She turned 58. She wanted a backyard dinner, string lights, a chocolate cake, the family together. She had been planning it for a month. I want to be honest about the decision I made about that dinner, because I think honesty matters here. I did not plan it as a trap. I planned it as a disclosure. There is a difference. A trap is designed to deceive. What I was planning was to present documentation to my family before the legal process made the documentation public and allowed my brother-in-law and sister to control the narrative of what had happened. My mother deserved to know. My aunts and uncles deserved to know. The family had been told through Paige's channels that I was having money trouble. Aunt Harriet had called me in July to ask if I needed help, which was how I learned that Paige had been describing my financial situation to relatives without mentioning that she had caused it. I prepared one additional copy of the folder. I drove to the dinner. My mother had done the yard beautifully. String lights over the table, a cake that said Happy 58th Linda in blue frosting. 15 family members, aunts, cousins, Paige and Garrett with Lily and Emma, my mother, my grandmother, who had driven 3 hours for the occasion. I sat across from Paige at dinner. She looked fine. I had expected her to look the way people look when they have done something that is on record with law enforcement. She did not look that way. She looked like a woman at her mother's birthday dinner, relaxed, present, refilling glasses. Garrett made a joke that made the table laugh. At some point midway through dinner, Aunt Harriet turned to me. Paige mentioned you've been having money trouble, honey. Is there anything the family can do? I looked at Paige. She was looking at her plate. I reached into my bag. I stood up. I'm glad you brought that up, I said. I'd like to show everyone something. I had made 6 copies of the folder, one for each adult at the table who was not Garrett or Paige. I walked around the table and placed one in front of my mother, my grandmother, Aunt Harriet, my Uncle Dale, my cousin Renee, and the empty chair beside her that I used as a surface. I sat down. Tab 1 is my bank statement. Friday, June 14th, balance $50,147. Saturday, June 15th, the day of the family reunion, balance $3,147. 3 Zelle transfers executed between 2:14 and 2:31 p.m. I looked at Garrett. He was very still. Tab 2 is the transaction records. Recipient initials GH. Tab 3 is the device origin report from my bank's fraud division. The transfers originated from the IP address of the tablet at my farm store, the tablet that was present at the reunion, and that Garrett was photographed standing beside at 1:58 p.m., 14 minutes before the first transfer. My grandmother picked up her copy. She was 79 years old and had worked as a bookkeeper for 30 years before she retired, and she read Tab 1 with the focused attention of a woman who understood what she was looking at. Tab 4 is a forensic accounting summary prepared by my CPA, Ruth Alcott, documenting where each transfer went. $18,000 to a dissolved LLC, $14,000 to a sports betting platform, $15,000 to a joint account belonging to Garrett and Paige, withdrawn in cash within 48 hours in structured amounts just below the daily limit. Paige had gone the specific color of a person who has just understood that the room they are in has changed. Tab 5 is the most recent item. I opened the evidence sleeve. I placed the plastic-sleeved document on the table. This is a screenshot of my banking app balance, printed on paper, found in my sister's denim jacket pocket in my storage shed last month. The timestamp is 2:08 p.m. June 15th, 6 minutes before the first transfer. In the bottom margin is a note in my sister's handwriting. I looked at Paige, then I read it aloud. Enough. G says yes. The table was completely quiet. My grandmother set down her folder. My mother looked at Paige the way a mother looks at a child who has done something that requires more than a moment to absorb. Garrett slammed his palm on the table. Plates jumped. My grandmother's water glass tipped and righted. Lily startled at the kids' table and began to cry in the way children cry when they understand that something is very wrong without knowing what it is. You think you're better than us. His voice had the heat of a man who has run out of other arguments and is trying to fill the space with volume. You've always looked down on Paige, on me, your little ranch, your noble horses, your CPA and your spreadsheets. You've always made us feel like nothing. I kept my hands flat on the table. I looked at him. I'm not asking for an apology, Garrett, I said. I'm showing my family what happened, with documents, because documents don't have opinions. I'll pay it back. His voice shifted. The heat went out of it and something more calculating came in. Every cent. Just call it off. Call Beckett. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. I'll pay you back this month. I don't make mistakes with numbers, I said. You know that. 3 firm knocks on the front door. My mother looked at me. I looked at the door. She stood up and walked through the kitchen. The screen door opened. The sound of her voice, and then a voice I recognized. Deputy Earl Beckett walked into the backyard in full uniform, badge catching the string lights. He stopped at the edge of the table and looked at the assembled family with the measured expression of a man who has been in difficult rooms before and finds them navigable. Evening, folks. Sorry to interrupt. He looked at Garrett. Mr. Hollis, I have a warrant for your arrest. Larceny by unauthorized access to a computer in connection with the theft of $47,000 from Acton Ridge Rescue on June 15th of this year. I need you to come with me. Garrett looked at me, not with anger, not anymore, with the specific expression of a man who had built his entire approach to this situation on the assumption that I would not follow through, and who was receiving showing, in the middle of his mother-in-law's birthday dinner under string lights, the information that he had been wrong. "You actually did it," he said. "I told you," I said. "I don't make mistakes with numbers." Deputy Beckett was patient and professional. He waited while Garrett stood. He waited while Lily cried and Paige made a sound I had not heard from her before, and my mother stood in the kitchen doorway with her hand over her mouth. The handcuffs clicked. Beckett walked Garrett through the kitchen and out the front door with the quiet efficiency of someone doing a job he had done many times and would do many times again. The string lights stayed on. The cake said, "Happy 58. Linda" in blue frosting. Garrett was charged with larceny by computer in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which carries a felony classification when the amount exceeds $1,000. The charge was later supplemented by a fraud count related to the dissolved LLC transfer. My sister was charged as a co-conspirator based on tab 5 and the evidence of premeditation it established. Her attorney filed for a plea arrangement in October. Ruth Alcott's forensic summary was submitted to the prosecutor as supporting documentation. The ranch received a restitution order as part of the proceeding. The money came back in payments, which is not the same as having it available in the months it was missing. I had to take out a short-term loan in July to cover feed costs, which is a practical consequence of theft that does not appear in legal documents, but which 22 horses experienced directly. Deputy Beckett called me after the arraignment. "You built a clean case," he said. The tab 5 document was the piece that made it unambiguous. Without it, we had strong circumstantial evidence. With it, we had conspiracy. That changes the severity of the charges significantly. "I found it by chance," I said. "Most people miss it," he said. "They either don't look or they don't know what they're looking at when they find it." I had spent 11 years as an accountant. I looked at every document. I knew what I was looking at. Lily came to see Biscuit in September. Paige drove her, which required a conversation I will not fully describe except to say that it was brief and uncomfortable and did not resolve anything that needed resolving and that I had not expected it to. Paige had her own accounting to do that was between her and herself and eventually a court. Lily ran to the fence the moment she got out of the car. Biscuit ambled over with his 31-year-old dignity and let her feed him apple slices and pet his nose. She talked to him the way children talk to animals, earnestly, without self-consciousness, with the specific trust of a kid who has learned that horses don't judge. I stood at the fence beside her. "Is he going to be okay?" she asked. She meant in general. She is 7 and has a good instinct for the important questions. "He's okay," I said. "We make sure of that." She fed him another apple slice. "Good," she said. "The ranch is still running. 22 horses. The margins are tight, which is the permanent condition of this work, but they are the correct margins, honest ones, built from what actually exists rather than what I thought existed on a Saturday night before I opened my banking app. I reconcile numbers every night before bed. I always have. The difference now is that I do it knowing the number I see is the real one.